Normally a challenge to speak after lunch, so I hope you won't doze. I'm Willy Kanyeki from Myriad Connect. Myriad Connect is a company that was founded 2001, and we've done many things, including providing core network platforms for the MNOs from a communications channel and all. And in the span of that, we've done a couple of projects in Africa that touch on the communications layer for mobile money that the MNOs provide, and there have been many insights. So I think, John, I'm the second person now that will speak as a person that makes a living from just dealing with the fraudsters. Seems to be a growing industry. Having said that, I think when you think about Kenya, in many ways, as a Kenyan, I'm proud about the space that we play in because we are early adopters, we have lots of innovations that happen. But then, as you will see, and as John has mentioned, with innovation comes two sets of innovators, if I may call them so. There's the clean innovator type, and then there's the fraudulent person that, in today's scenario, they do not need to run through the bank through the front door. They can now be tech savvy and still, walk away with the sort of numbers that we had being quoted earlier on today. Looking at Kenya, as we grow, just looking at the numbers, financial inclusion, and this has been primarily driven by the fact that almost every presenter that's come forward has put, as part of the presentation, a nice photo of a handset. Because indeed, this is where the whole drive, the whole financial inclusion growth, at least in Africa, is happening. So when you look at the numbers, they say that Kenya has a 75% financial inclusion rate, which is pretty high when you compare it with the sub-Saharan average, which is 34%. And when you look at the mobile phone penetration, we are almost at 100%. So literally, around about everybody has access to a handset, whether it's a smartphone or the entry-level handset. And like I said, with digital innovation comes the challenge of more exposure to fraud. Now, it's not as gloomy as John was saying, I think, in a way. I think in other markets, life can also be hard. They say in the UK that every 15 seconds, someone in the UK is being defrauded. I didn't make the stats. I'm just reading them as they're pointed. Hopefully the guys were quite honest in this set. When you look at the card fraud, also in the EU, it's pretty high, big numbers. In the US, you can see there is significant attempts that are being done to defraud, the people there. Now, moving on specifically into a space that is, I think, very relevant for us, certainly within the Kenyan space, which is SIM-swap fraud, which is an area that we specialize in. Now, SIM-swap, as we know, you have what you'd call, there's a genuine SIM-swap where you lose your phone or you're upgrading from a 2G SIM card onto a 4G or a 3G. So you'll walk up to a telco and you provide all your documents and then you'll get the upgrade. Now, that's good. However, there's also the other side of it, whereby, for all of us that I think walked in with laptops and all, we've given in our personal information at the gates, at the reception. You've given your name, you've given your phone number, I think email address. We've given quite a bit of information that's sitting over there. If you're doing mobile money transfer or anything of that sort, there's a lot of data that's sitting in many different places. Now, the fraudsters have access to that sort of data. I'm told in Nairobi at times, all they have to do is pay a couple of shillings and they'll access a big fat book that has a lot of data in it. It's called data mining, but manual data mining. So they will sit and go through that. It gets a lot worse where transactions are done, so they can see what sort of values that you're transferring day to day. Using the example of sending money to Kisumu or wherever, all the numbers are there. So if somebody has access to your personal information, they know where you're sending your money to, they can easily walk up to any telco and make changes. And this is what's been happening. If you've been reading the newspapers or even watching telly, you've seen there's been lots of arrests that have happened recently. Have you seen that? Yeah, so this is our reality. Again, you also get SMSs, and I'll put up the stats here. You'll get SMSs or phone calls. I think this happens to a lot of us, right? Someone will say they're calling from entity A, whether it's your bank or your telco, and in some cases, they even call you by your name, so you really believe it. I have a personal example where my wife's mother was calling her, and then she received another call on the other phone, and she believed the other caller was a genuine person. Why? Because he actually used the name, her name, and even date of birth was very clear. Can you imagine? You definitely believe that that caller is a real deal. Long story short, she lost a lot of money. And it happened more than once. And our case is not unique. I'm sure all the Kenyans here have a story to tell. Maybe over tea break, they can share those sort of notes. Again, like I said, it's not unique to us. So this is a case that was put up in the US. It's also happening to folks that are in cryptocurrencies and things of that nature. So you'll get one-time password. So you're very nice. You have your Bitcoins or what coins, this other coin. And you want to buy, you want to sell, you want to move. So you'll get a one-time password and you're very happy and you're smiling. Thing is, the fraudsters are smiling maybe even harder than you because they've seen, there's a pot of gold on the other side. So it's not unique to Kenya. So what we did do within the Kenyan market, we undertook a survey. We said, okay, we know there's a problem. When I speak to my mother, my auntie, and the neighbors, they tell me there's a problem. But then we wanted to quantify and say, okay, how deep of a challenge is it in this market? Now, the numbers were a bit staggering. So 70% of the people that we surveyed said to us that either they have been victims or know someone that's been a victim of fraud. And maybe by a show of hands, certainly for those of us that are Kenyan, is there anyone in this room that doesn't know anyone that's been defrauded, or at least an attempt that has been done? Okay, just by a show of hands. I think it's easier to see who doesn't know anyone that's been a victim. Anyone? So if I was doing a quick survey here, I would say it's like 100%. But 70 is good, right? 70 at least leaves 30 as a, yeah? So we all know someone. Now, the thing that we then went a step further, which was to ask the folks, okay, in the cases where you've been defrauded or know of someone that's been defrauded, how did it happen? Now, two big channels or avenues came to mind of those that we surveyed. Number one was the phone call. We all know those phone calls that come. I once received a phone call from a leading telco provider, but then in the background there was a train passing. It sounded like it was a marketplace, and I said no. Those guys with the sort of results that they give annually, they cannot have customer care sitting out there, asking me very personal information, right? So that was a giveaway. However, we all get those phone calls. And then there are the SMSs that come through that say, something's happened to your account. Can you please quickly get hold of us? We need to sort out your data. We know those SMSs, right? Am I speaking to the right audience? Yeah, so we know these things. And less so maybe social media, and even less so maybe email. So the guys are, the fraudsters are just as innovative as the clean guys. We went further, and then we did a quick survey, quick Q&A, and you find that most of the one-time passwords are sent by SMS. Now, SMS is good, don't get me wrong. But it's normally good for passing on a message like saying, hey, I'm a bit busy, I'm listening to some guy talking to us about fraud. I'm at the School of Monetary Studies. Something like that, a generic message. But when you're passing on sensitive info, maybe it's not the best channel. Yeah. When you look at the US, you have the NIST that carried out, a quick survey or research, and they advised that SMS may not necessarily be the best way to deal with financial transaction type data. Now, when you look at the space that we're talking about, 27% of us Kenyans are using digital credit, which is quite high. Actually, they say 1 in 4 is using this sort of data. Now, the reality is for penetration and all of that, and then moving away from a brick and mortar and moving on to the pockets of people, it's the handset, it's the tablet, and to some degree, maybe the computer. 70%, which was quite staggering also in itself, when we asked folks that are in the FS space, when it comes to the threats, where do they see that coming through? Most of them said, at least 70% of them said, that there is a bit of internal elements. So for those of us working in the big institutions, you know that there could be one or two rotten apples within your space that create, because, you know, ask yourself, how do the guys have so much information about you? Or when you look at the cases of arrests, there is normally an insider. Yeah, we've seen that, right? So there's a challenge of that sort. So when you think about having a solution or something that can try and tackle the challenges that are coming through, you need something that would cut across the different mediums or different channels. So you're thinking about web, is a mobile app, then you have USSD, and also things that can deal with the agents. Now in Kenya, today, at least up to where we are, maybe smartphones make up, best case scenario, 30-40% of the existing handsets we have. So most of the people are still, you know, doing transactions via USSD. So you need something that can cover, you know, from the extreme end of the smart apps right down to the mama mboga that was mentioned early in the morning by the governor. So as in wrapping up, you know, a word from the sponsor, because they ensured that I came here to speak. So it would be nice to say something good about us and what we do. When you think about securing the sort of transactions that you're doing in that digital space, there's identity theft, there's a lot of things that are going on in that space. You'd want to have a channel or a medium or a tool that can cut across from man in the middle type attacks to a tool that, you know, it doesn't matter what sort of technology that you're rolling out your systems on, you know, it's something that's ubiquitous, something that cuts across, and you know, it will be something that will be quite interesting to talk to you about as we move along. I think I'm in good time, and we can ask questions later. Thank you.